What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB, and more specifically, an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. We are just 2 weeks into the season, and over the last 30 days over on KeepTradeCut.com, players have been rising and players have been falling down these rankings at a rapid rate. What we are going to be doing today, me and my co-host MFGDs, we are going to be going through the top 5 risers and the top 5 fallers for Dynasty Fantasy Football purposes. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about risers and fallers. War, how we doing today, man?
Hey, man, yeah, we good, man. Despite everything, we good, man. We good over here.
Despite everything, huh?
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, like I said, we are going to be talking risers and fallers. As I mentioned, it's only been 2 weeks here, man. It's only been 2 weeks, but it feels like the Dynasty marketplace has been flipped on its head. Things have changed rapidly. So what I want to do is I want to go through the risers first because I feel like that is the most exciting. I want to hit you with the positive, then we'll talk about some of the negative, but we are going to start with the risers. So first off, the number one riser on Keep Trade Cut right now, Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers. So Jordan Mason just 30 days ago was being valued as the running back 66 on Keep Trade Cut, and he is now the running back 20 on Keep Trade Cut. So that kind of puts him in a tier here with guys like Rachaad White, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixon, James Conner. These are the guys that he is surrounded by. How are we feeling about Jordan Mason? How are we feeling about, Christian McCaffrey, I guess, is going to be a part of this conversation because he is the reason why Jordan Mason has risen. And how do we just feel about this whole, top 20 running back, Jordan Mason?
Fool's gold, because Jordan Mason has been in the league, like, what's this, is like third year. The guy
something
just
like that.
I don't even think the guy has a picture yet on Sleeper. Look, so we all know the 49ers. We all know their offense. We know how they operate. They could put me and you back there and it'll make us look like relevant fantasy running backs. I kid. I know that's not true. I kid. But I think this is as good as until Christian McCaffrey this is as good until Elijah Mitchell gets back. I mean, I don't think Elijah Mitchell's out for the entire season. And
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say he might be out all year.
That guy. Either way, Christian McCaffrey, let's say Christian McCaffrey comes, which Christian McCaffrey will come back. The 49ers don't necessarily have Christian McCaffrey is the only running back that the 49ers have ever really shown like true loyalty to. I mean, you had Raheem Mostert, you had Jeff Wilson. You just bring in this hodgepodge of guys and they are placed. So yeah, for now, for a temporary boost, yes, Jordan Mason, he will be a nice asset to add to your team. But for the long term, because we are talking dynasty here, we're not talking about, please guys, don't think that this is the breakout party for Jordan Mason, that he's going to become this guy that you draft in the first few rounds of fantasy drafts coming up, man. It just is what it is. He is the current starting running back for the 49ers. C-Mac will be back and Jordan Mason will be back to nothing.
Fair enough. So I kind of want to talk about, two directions in which maybe you have Jordan Mason on your roster and how you would go about, the recent rise in value for Jordan Mason. So I do agree with you in the aspect of, this is a temporary asset here with Jordan Mason. We do expect Christian McCaffrey to be back at some point. We don't know exactly when that will be yet, but it does seem like the 49ers were at least optimistic that it was going to be something like 4 weeks of Jordan Mason being the starter, 6 weeks of Jordan Mason being the starter. But at the same time, they were optimistic that, CMC was going to start the year. So it's tough to kind of trust what they're saying there in San Francisco at the moment. First situation I want to talk about is, let's say, you have Jordan Mason on your team and your team is a competitive roster. You think you can run at a championship this year. Are you looking to capitalize on the production that Jordan Mason is going to give you here for the next little while? Because quite honestly, when he is in the starting lineup for the Niners, he's a running back 1 in fantasy football. He's been putting up top 12 numbers. So are you just going to ride the hot hand with Jordan Mason and take those points and win those weeks to put you in position to hopefully get a first round bye, hopefully, get one of those? Or are you going to sell right now for future draft capital or something like that and capitalize on the investment?
I'm selling. We all know I'm not the beacon of great decisions, but What I will what I will say is that how I would approach it if I had him on my roster, I would try to trade him for a player that I know isn't going to be as explosive and successful as he is, but someone who I know for sure, and this is if I'm a contender, someone who I know for sure is not in danger of losing their position outside of injury. Like, call me crazy. Would I move him if the option is there to move him for Najee Harris, who I know hasn't played, great so far this season, but I also don't think he's in any danger of losing his starting position as the running back one for the Steelers. I would rather have that season-long production versus the 4 or 5 weeks of huge Jordan Mason production, because I am trying to win here. And if C-Mac comes back and Jordan Mason goes to being maybe a 5-point a week guy because he's just spelling C-Mac, then now I missed out on having that season-long production from a guy like Najee Harris.
Yeah, I agree. He was actually one of the names that I was looking at. I was looking at Najee. I was looking at maybe, somebody who, wants to sell Derrick Henry. I'm willing to take Derrick Henry for the year and see what he gives me rather than, just have Jordan Mason, because I do believe that CMC will be back this year. A couple other names that I think are interesting, and I'll run them by you because they've been kind of risers themselves. Well, one of them specifically has been a riser. The others kind of stayed where he's at, but we won't talk about them on today's episode. Braylon Allen. Would you move Jordan Mason for Braylon Allen today?
I like Braylon Allen, but we know he has no shot
without injury.
Without injury, which is a range of outcomes. But at the same time, C-Mac has that exact same range of outcomes. So I kind of feel like with that one, you could be possible. But then again, they've shown that they can use Braylon Allen. I would consider it.
The other guy I was going to mention was Trey Benson.
I would really consider that because that James Conner wheel has to stop rolling at some point. I really would consider that one. Yeah.
Eventually. All right. So I do agree with you at some point. I'm willing to, if I have the depth and I can, afford to not need the extra piece. I'm willing to ride the hot hand with Jordan Mason here. But like you said, if you can get a Najee, a David Montgomery, a Rashad White, one of these guys, Derrick Henry, Pollard, one of those guys, I'm okay with you, making the swap and maybe getting less points over the next, month, but you get more points for the season because we do expect them to remain the starters. Maybe even an Aaron Jones from Minnesota or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, the other situation would be if you're a rebuilder, obviously we are willing to sell immediately. That being said, if you're rebuilding and you're selling for draft capital, are you going for the first? Are you trying to get somebody to send you a first-round pick?
You always go for the first.
Are you
go for
willing
the first
to
until you can't
settle?
get it.
What are you willing to settle for? Are you willing to settle for the second? Would you sell for a third? If he's going for a third, are you more likely to just keep him on the roster?
Yeah, the club. I'm not right now. The only way I would trade him for a third is if there's already knowledge that Christian McCaffrey's coming back and I'm in danger of not getting anything for him.
CMC manager, here's your handcuff. Give me a third.
Yeah.
I think you sell him now though. I'm definitely willing to. I'm willing to settle for a second. If you can go out there, get the second round pick, and you're rebuilding, you need the draft capital. I'll take the mystery box of the second round pick. Let that sit on my roster, increase in value, and then when draft season comes around, maybe then you're flipping it for something else or just making the selection. But I definitely agree there. But Jordan Mason, one of the biggest risers so far, the biggest riser on Keep Trade Cut. But it feels like it's a short term riser, not necessarily here to stay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's go to the next riser. The next riser is going to be here to stay. It is going to be Devon Achane for the Miami Dolphins. He went from the running back 6 to the running back 3. Now, that might not seem like it is the biggest riser, but when you think of the points needed to go from running back 6 to running back 3 when you're at the top, it's a pretty significant amount of points to move when you're already in an elite tier. So he has passed guys like ETN, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. He's passed Jahmyr Gibbs at this point. It is now Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Devon Achane. Want to ask you, we've been very positive about Devon Achane in conversations so far this year. How are we feeling about him as a riser? Is this legitimate? This is the expectation for Achane moving forward?
I actually have not been that positive about him in previous videos about him.
I have.
I've kind of called him the Puka Nacua of running backs, but I want to admit that I've changed my tune on Achane. Now, while I do have questions about the guys that he's risen above, I now can officially say I have no problem with him being at running back 6. I don't know about over Saquon. Christian McCaffrey, he's scary right now because I just had a gut feeling about McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor, I don't. Those are the two that stand out to me. The three that stand out to me are Gibbs, Taylor, and Saquon. Don't know if I'm ready to put Achane above them, but I'm willing to listen on 2 of the 3. But I'm not listening to him over Gibbs. Like Gibbs having a little. He's not exploding the way I predicted he would, but I still see him as a better asset than Achane. But with the way he's playing right now, the points he's putting up, man, it's hard to dispute that he doesn't deserve to rise. I just don't know if he could keep this up at his current stature, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I definitely agree. You know, the size, well, let's just be honest. The size was a worry coming in. You know, that was something as a rookie, people were like, he's a little bit too small, he's a little bit too light, he might not be able to have a full workload. And now you have Mike McDaniel who's saying, we don't care. We're about to give him a full workload and we're gonna run the wheels off of Devon Achane. And so far, for fantasy football purposes, we had a little bit of a scare going into week 2, you know, when Devon was a little bit banged up, but he still played and he finished as the running back 3 on the week despite the Dolphins getting blown out that week by the Buffalo Bills. But look, so far, 61.5% of the rushing share for Miami, 19.2% of the target share. That is the big thing for Devon Achane, is he has been getting a larger target share in the receiving game than Jalen Waddle this year. Yeah. He has got more targets than Jalen Waddle in the receiving game. That is making him so valuable in fantasy football. And like we said, you know, so far a number 7 overall finish on the week in week 1, number 3 overall week 2. Like he looks like, and I've been on record after week 1 saying that if that usage continued that we saw in week 1, he looked like an actual league winning type of asset. Like he could end up being the best pick that anybody made in fantasy football this year. And all of that being considered, I think rightfully deserves to be a riser. It's hard for me. I love Jahmyr Gibbs, absolutely love Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think he is a elite talent. But when I'm looking at him and, you know, Achane and Gibbs, it's hard for me to look at the production that Achane has and say, well, I'd rather have Gibbs, because Gibbs isn't doing that. Gibbs isn't getting that type of workload. Gibbs isn't getting that type of production. He's really good. He's, you know, still giving us running back 1 weeks and things like that. But Achane looks like he could be the running back 1 at the end of the year.
Do you think the injury or the concussion of Tua help? So you think Skylar Thompson being in there helps Achane, keeps him where he is now, or makes him worse?
I think it's going to keep him around where he's at. I don't think, because I think it's going to help him and hurt him in some different ways. So I think where it's going to hurt him is with that target share, that 19.2% target share where he's getting in the receiving game. That's going to come down a little bit. But what they're going to do is they'll lean on him in the rushing game a little bit more because they don't want Skylar Thompson to throw the football. So, you know, maybe that kind of equals each other out and then we don't see that big of a dip. But obviously I'd like to see him get more PPR work than he would, you know, on the ground, because I feel like the PPR is worth more than the rushing, just because every catch that he gets is an extra point. That's 10 more yards rushing.
Also, but I feel like there's a chance that he could still keep up the PPR work, because I could see them, because of Skylar Thompson, I could see them just doing more screen plays, more backfield passes, things like that. So he might still be able to keep that, because that's where a lot of his work was coming at anyway. So
absolutely,
I think that's a part of the game plan they'll definitely keep in there, even if Tua is out.
Agreed. And Mike McDaniel's already said too, like, you know, this is an opportunity to kind of just lean into Devon Achane a little bit more into this offense and see what else, you know, he can do. That does make me nervous. It does make me nervous when they say, you know, we want to lean into it even more and give him even more work, because he just doesn't seem like the guy that needs nor should be receiving, you know, 70-80% of your touches on offense, because when that happens, the wear and tear, it starts to kind of weigh on him. So
dude, it's ridiculous, because that game where they were getting like blown out and Mike McDaniel still had him in there, I was like, please God, take him out. As an Achane, I was like, please God, take him out. Please, I'm begging you, please take him out of the game. Like, let's preserve him. Let's preserve my league winner for future games. Like, where they're blown out, it's over. Tua's not coming back. He has 25 points already. Just get him out of there.
Yeah. So look, if you're rebuilding, having Achane on the roster, fine. Usually we say, when you're rebuilding, you probably shouldn't be rostering running backs anyways, just for the most part, because they're the easiest thing to replace. You draft them,
Yeah.
in the final year when you're ready to go, or you buy a James Conner type and you get a top 12 season. So I would say, if you have him, definitely an opportunity for you to sell out high. But as a contender, I can't imagine that I'm actually even considering selling Devon Achane at this point. I'm willing to just ride the hot hand with Achane this year and see if I have the league winner.
Yeah, it's the right choice.
You're not considering at all maybe a tier down. If you can go from Achane to ETN in a first, or Achane to Kenneth Walker in a first, or Achane to James Cook in a first, are you considering this at all?
Look, dude, we're in the league together in a nice league where I've traded HN for what now feels definitely like pennies. Now feels like pennies.
It was not recently. It was a while ago.
It wasn't this version of HN, but it was the version of HN where we were wondering hey, who is this little guy doing these little guy things, and how long is this going to last? Now he's starting off this season still doing let's be honest here, Andrew. We're going to get a 50 it's a guaranteed 50-point game coming up somewhere.
They're loading.
And yeah, it's loading. So man, I'm not tearing down, because at this point, what are you tearing down to? You just said Jahmyr Gibbs, who I picked as our fantasy running back of the year.
Yep.
You tearing down to the running back of the yeah. I mean, he's hard to trade for good reasons right now, because what value are you going to get? He's doing it in the run game and the pass.
Fair enough.
It's hard to find guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The last guy who kind of was getting the work in the receiving in the run game like this was Chris McCaffrey, and Chris McCaffrey was, number one overall. So there you go. But let's move on. Talking about the passing game, let's talk about a receiver here that's been rising. We're going to talk about Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. He went from the wide receiver 49 to the wide receiver 25 in the last 30 days. Obviously, Jameson Williams truthers, they've been out, they've been around. We've kind of flip-flopped back and forth at times on how we feel about him. We liked him, we didn't like him, we were fed up with him. We flip-flopped a lot on Jameson Williams, and maybe I'm speaking more so of me. I don't want to speak for you, but Jameson Williams now wide receiver 25, legitimately a top 25 wide receiver in Dynasty. Is that where we're at now?
I refuse to subscribe to that until I see multiple weeks where both him, because here's the thing, dude, and I know I could kind of call back to some things you've said earlier in the offseason about what you think is going to happen with Sam Laporta, and I've been meaning to tell you that so far your prediction is looking quite accurate about Sam Laporta, but it's okay, it's the balancing act of wondering if Laporta steps it up, are we going to see the same Jameson Williams? Are we going to see the same Jamo? We know Amon-Ra is going to get his, no matter what. No matter what, he's getting his. So it's do we really believe that we're going to get these lackluster performances from Sam Laporta for long? Because you have to think at some point, Goff is going to be oh man, let me get Sam Laporta involved. And that's probably going to come at the expense of Jamo, because it's not going to come at the expense of Amon-Ra. It'll come at the expense of Gibbs too. They clearly, Detroit has a history of not giving his running backs the type of touches they deserve. So we know he's going to be the first one to lose his piece of the pie. But I don't know, man. I have to see more from Jamo. I'm not ready to write him in as this bona fide star all of a sudden. I got to see more. I got to see more evidence or body of work for Jamo before I start thinking that he deserves that spot.
Yeah, I mean, so far, everything that I've seen out of him has been really good. 20 targets through 2 games. He had 11 targets last week, 9 in week 1. 2 weeks now as a top 24 finisher. Week 1, he was a top 5 finisher at the position in a half-point PPR type of format in your PPR league. Same type of deal anyways. But I'm just looking at what he's done. 5 red zone targets, 25% target share. This is one of the better offenses in the NFL. They play fast. They score a lot of points. We were worried about Sam Laporta because it felt like what he did last year to be productive was going to be hard to replicate again, especially if Jameson Williams broke out. And it looks like Jameson Williams is breaking out. And so I do think that Jameson Williams is rightfully deserving of a riser in dynasty ranks. If you had him where you had him, or you bought him this offseason where he was in the 50s or something, I think at that point they said he was, 30 days ago, he was in the 60s. If you bought him there, you're feeling really good right now, because it looks like you got an actual stud. I'm just looking at some of the guys around him though, and I kind of want to play the game of JMO and then you can tell me what you think. But JMO or Romo Dunze?
Romo Doomsday. And I'm not saying
JMO,
that because I'm a Bears fan either.
yeah, I agree with you though. JMO or Zay Flowers?
Oh man, with the volume, Zay Fly, I gotta go with Zay.
Jackson Smith and Jigba?
I'm still taking JSN.
George Pickens?
I'm not the biggest. I'm not gonna say biggin. I'm not the biggest Pickens guy, but I'll lean slightly on Pickens right now because he is their wide receiver, and they don't have an Amon Ra there to.
I think George Pickens is one of the best buy lows in fantasy at the moment. I think
Yeah,
the usage statistics that he has are elite. Like he has some of the best separation scores in the NFL at the moment. He has some of the highest target shares. He has some of the whatever. They just don't throw the football a lot. You know a little bit about that. Just based off of the history with Justin Fields. But I think, the usage is there. It's coming. So I would buy George Pickens a little bit low. Another couple names real quick just to get through these guys. DJ Moore.
I'm taking DJ Moore.
Jaden Reed.
I'm taking Jaden Reed.
And then lastly, Tank Dell.
You've kind of soured me on Tank Dell a little bit, but I'm still taking Tank Dell.
I would take JMO over Dell. I think that's the only one, though. I don't think I'd take him over Pickens yet. I don't think I'd take him over DJ Moore. Jaden Reed, it's a conversation I think you could have, but I still, I've been the Jaden Reed guy. Yeah, man, that's just where we're at with Jameson Williams right now. When you look at like draft pick value, if you wanted to capitalize on Jameson Williams, obviously if you have Jameson Williams, the likelihood of you, he's only a couple of years into the league, 2 years into the league now at this point or something like that. So like him being where he's at, you spent a first round pick to get him. You can sell him now for a 25 first round pick. Are you re-rolling the dice, or are you seeing enough now where you don't want to re-roll the dice? You just want to see what you got in the kid?
I think that's a pretty even trade.
I think I'd rather just roll with JMO at this point than re-roll. If I could have re-rolled last year, I would have done it. But not anymore.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's looking bad. I sold JMO in a league this offseason for a second round pick, and now I'm wishing I had JMO instead of that second round pick. I used the second round pick and I drafted Trey Benson with that second round pick. So I guess we'll see what that happens to be in the future. But right now it's looking very much like I should have just had JMO.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did the same exact league. I did sell Sam Laporta for Puka Nacua, which obviously Puka got hurt, but selling him for Puka does feel like that was a good move.
Yeah. I mean, that shows you win some, you lose some.
Win some, you lose some. You just got to consistently win enough that you keep profiting long term. So let's move on to another riser here. One of these risers, we already said his name on the show. It is J.K. Dobbins of the Los Angeles Chargers. One of the bigger risers, just looking at where he went. Running back 52, the Achilles tear, the ACL tear, finds his way with Greg Roman in this Jim Harbaugh offense, and now he's the running back 18, top 20 back again in Dynasty. Is this what we're doing with J.K. Dobbins, or is this a sell high when you can?
Oh, man, it's so tricky because he's a ticking time bomb, isn't he? Or it feels like he's a ticking time bomb. Like,
I'm scared. If I have J.K. Dobbins, I'm scared as hell, and I want to get out.
I mean, yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame. This doesn't feel very sustainable, does it? I mean, he's putting up numbers. I mean, I'm just looking at it. Now, we have him in the league where I got him for a third and a fifth. I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about it. Yeah, but at the same time, I do acknowledge that you gotta have Gus Edwards like on the side, ready to go, like at any given moment. Harbaugh being there is a plus. It's a plus having Harbaugh there. We know with Dobbins, I think it's more so can his body hold up. If his body can hold up, then I'm good with him. But you're playing a risky game. It
is a risky game, and I just look at the numbers too, and it's like the efficiency at which he is running is out of control. It's out of control. The numbers, they just scream unsustainable. Like not even possible for you to continue doing this. Last week, actually, let's go to week one. Week one, he had 13 touches in the game. 13 touches only in the game. That's not a lot for the folks at home. 135 yards. He broke off a 61-yard run, 4 yards receiving. No work in the receiving game. Big play. That happened on minimal touches. Then you go to the following week, against Carolina. Probably the worst defense in the NFL. 17 attempts, 131 yards. He broke off a 43-yard run for a touchdown. 1 catch, 0 yards. No work in the receiving game. It feels to me like we've had 2 weeks against 2 bad defenses in both weeks where J.K. Dobbins had a big run and found the end zone. Now, obviously, you say, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, right? Like, I think it's the other way around. Something like that. Whatever. I just try to be whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So he did it twice. So now we can, have the conversation of like, is this run scheme just that good? Maybe, right. But man, I see 60-yard runs on the stat sheet, and no work in the receiving game, and a guy with an Achilles tear and an ACL tear in his history. And he's now, a guy that is a little bit older. He's going to be, at the running back age cliff here very shortly. He's 26 this year, second contract running back. Like, what's to keep in a dynasty league? What's to keep Los Angeles from next year in a very, very good running back class from saying, bring another guy in? Let's just bring another guy in and see what happens. And who's to say it would be a pretty good bet, that the young guy probably looks better than what JK does.
Now, you asked the question. You said who's to say, right?
Yeah.
I actually think I have an answer to that question for who's to say.
Who is that?
Greg Roman, because Greg Roman, for some reason, has undying loyalty to these running backs like Gus Edwards. Maybe. That doesn't mean they won't draft one. I highly doubt. I mean, I could see them drafting one like in the mid to late rounds, and then, they're still going to make that guy win the job. But if we're talking about health, we're talking about two running backs that have a history of injury. So, yeah, I mean, dynasty-wise, I definitely, if you're a contender or you're trying to make a playoff push, then by all means, Dobbins it up. But if you're like rebuilding, that man should not be anywhere near your roster at all.
I just think he's a sell no matter what, man. Like, even if I'm a contender, like, because here's my thought process. And maybe you could say that I'm playing timid here, but the reality is if he gets another injury, he does go out and suffer something that makes him miss some significant time, this is over. Like, he goes from the value of which he is now to where people don't want him on their roster ever again. Like, it's a zero.
Which he was pretty close to before.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it'll be worse. If he has another injury, it'll be worse than what it was before, and you could barely keep him on your roster going into the offseason. So, right now, he's higher than guys like, he's in the conversation with Joe Mixon, Rachaad White, David Montgomery, James Conner. Like, if you want to roll the dice on an old running back, like, I'm flipping Dobbins for Conner today. I'm flipping Dobbins for Mixon today. I'm flipping him for, Derrick Henry today. And just, seeing what I have in those guys, because there's not as much risk, I don't think, as, I guess they're older, so there is risk no matter what when you get that age, but still, it just feels like he's a sell. And then when I look draft capital wise, like, we're talking about 27, a couple years out, 2 years out, but 2027 first round picks are in the same conversation, late 26 first round picks in the conversation with J.K. Dobbins. Like, if I can get that first round pick, I'm done. I'm out. See you later. Like, I don't need him.
Is there any running back right now that you feel like has the perfect combination of youth, future opportunity that you would move a Dobbins for? I mean, the first guy that comes to mind is Trey Benson. If there's someone who's moving Trey Benson for Dobbins, are you doing that? Or Braylon Allen or a guy like that? Braylon Allen's kind of murky because, who's in front of him. But
yeah, I don't know if there's somebody around him. Actually, know what? Jonathan Brooks is ahead of him a little bit. I'd be willing to throw on top of my, Dobbins to go get Jonathan Brooks. I'd be willing to do that. Guys above him a little bit that you might have to throw something on top, Dobbins in a second to go get this guy. Like Ramondre Stevenson, he looks like he's, the bell cow there in New England, and I might be willing to go do that. He's a little bit younger. Actually, I don't even think he's younger. I think he might be the same age as Dobbins. They're both 26, or will be both 26 this year. And then that being said too, like Brian Robinson, he feels like another guy that maybe, he's getting the usage and he feels like he's getting enough work. But I could understand why if you're flipping for those guys, you might say, just keep JK. But I think for me, the reality of the whole thing is I'm flipping for the draft capital. Like, if there's a contender who feels like they think, what he's done up to this point, which, by the way, running back 4 finish week 1, running back 4 finish week 2. That's overall, not a running back 4. That's the running back 4 both of those weeks. So a top 5 guy in both weeks. That's just not going to happen. The matchups coming up are Pittsburgh and Kansas City, and those are much, much, much tougher run defenses than he's faced in Las Vegas and Carolina.
Are you taking this opportunity to pay pennies to get a guy like Kamani Vidal on your roster? I know he's fallen below expectations because what people have been thinking going into the season is exactly what you're saying now. Is a young guy like that going to eventually supplant Dobbins? And in the event that Dobbins gets injured, because Gus Edwards has looked like nothing so far, in the event that, Dobbins gets injured or that production just falls all the way off the cliff, are you now seeing the door crack open for Kamani Vidal? Because this just seems like one of those perfect scenarios where you get to week 6, 7, 8, and all of a sudden they give him his shot, he blows up, never looks back. Like we've seen it happen 1,000 times.
It could be, and maybe I just need a price check on where Vidal is right now, because he does feel like a very forgotten man at
Yeah.
this point. Like price checking here, we're not this low, are we? Are we this low on Vidal? We can't be. No, there's no way we're this low. I gotta go back. Here we go. Kamani Vidal's the running back 61 at the moment. He's in like late 2025 third round pick territory. You know, you throw a late third, go get Kamani Vidal, maybe 10-man league, maybe you're throwing a fourth round pick trying to go buy Vidal. I don't mind it. Reality is I really do believe, and I know it sounds crazy, but because we felt like they would do that this year, but I really do believe next year, with next year's draft class and the running back talent in next year's class, the running back of the future in Los Angeles is in that class. It's not going to be on the roster currently.
I can see that. They tend to like their running backs over there.
So I'd be selling J.K. Dobbins. But let's go to one more riser before we go to the fallers. It is going to be Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He has went from the wide receiver 29 to the wide receiver 11. The offseason in general has been a absolute, I don't even know how to explain it. It's been insane for Rashee Rice. We got from Rashee Rice looked really good coming out of the season. He was, performed over expectation. Everybody was like, is he going to be for real? And then it was like Rashee's in trouble off the field, and now we all think that he's not even worth a damn. Like, people are panic selling Rashee Rice, thinking he's losing his career. Now all of a sudden, no suspension. Rashee Rice comes in. People are talking about he's the Kansas City version of what Amon-Ra St. Brown has been. Their words, not mine. Wide receiver 11 on Keep Trade Cut now. We're talking about a top 12 guy. How do we feel about Rashee Rice here in Kansas City?
I don't know. I got my Rashee Rice stock share when people were panic selling them. So
Me too.
I feel pretty good about Rashee Rice. I think that at one point I had Rashee Rice as a flex, but now he's risen up to like my wide receiver 2, and he's only there because Marvin Harrison is my wide receiver 1 in one of my teams. So I'm saying, yes, Rashee Rice, the way he's playing, you could definitely plug him in as a wide receiver 1, and that's crazy for what he was being sold for. He was being sold for like mid to early second round picks like earlier this offseason. So
I bought him for Evan Engram from B-Dub in one of our leagues. It was just Evan Engram for Rashee Rice, and he's a Chiefs fan, and he's sold out.
That's funny. I bought my share from him from B-Dub too.
He must have panicked. He was panicking for
hard,
sure.
Man. He panicked hard.
I did him a favor though later in the year. Not any type of collusion type of way, but I traded him my first round pick so he could draft Xavier Worthy in that league, so he was able to get Xavier Worthy. But that being said, man, I think this is legitimate for Rashee Rice. Like, I don't want to say he's a buy, but he might be a guy that I'm willing to buy high on at the moment, because I think this is legitimate for Rashee Rice. Like, I think he is a guy that we should be viewing as a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty rankings moving forward. I'm looking at the list, like, they have him pinched between, it's Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, and then underneath him, it's Devontae Smith, Chris Olave. Like, I think that's accurate for the production that we've gotten out of him so far. And, if I have to give up a Chris Olave to go get Rashee Rice, if somebody still believes in the Chris Olave and they're willing to give me Rashee for Olave, I think I'm doing it, man. Like, I that just makes sense to me. Buy the wide receiver 1 on the best quarterback in football's team and ride the hot hand, because I don't think it's changing anytime soon. Like, I think Worthy is going to continue being this big play guy, to complement this offense. I think Kelsey's showing his age at this point, and Rashee looks like the number 1 target in this offense. And now we're talking about a Chiefs offense that is likely going to be without Isaiah Pacheco for the remainder of the year. They're saying 6 to 8 weeks. Andy Reid said today in a press conference, it may be this year or next. That's the conversation that he's actually having. So if that is the case for Pacheco this year or next, they might just lean into this pass offense and just throw the football 50 times a game.
I think Pacheco will be back this year, man. He seems he's a pretty tough guy. But,
I do too, but 100%.
But that doesn't change what you're saying. That doesn't change them leaning into the passing offense. I kind of feel like they were going to end up going that route, whether Pacheco was injured or not. Just looking at, because the thing people forget, or I don't know if they forget, but the thing people have to consider is that the Chiefs passing offense last season wasn't like this prolific thing where like guys were just, this is a new thing to them since Tyreek Hill has gone. Like, this is the first time they're having this. So, I mean, I can't even tell, honestly, who was their running back? Kareem Hunt during that period of time. So he was able to get his.
Who, last year?
No, when Tyreek Hill was there.
It was Kareem or Damian Williams.
Yeah, guys like that. So, I mean, and we seen what they're able to do with that. So, and I don't think they have that type of, even though Kareem Hunt is on the team, I don't think they have that type of running back on their roster, even though I do like Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, whatever. I agree with you. I can see them lean on the passing game. They have all these great toys now on the side of Travis Kelce. They have Rashee Rice. They have Xavier Worthy. And I think that Rashee Rice is their at least number 2 guy, threatening to be number 1 as Kelce gets on in age and slows down a little bit.
I agree, man. I agree. If you can go get Rashee in a league, I'm doing it. I just think it makes too much sense. I think having him, on a team gives you an actual player that, one, is young in Dynasty, is going to be with Mahomes for the foreseeable future, and 2, gives you a real shot at being a top competitive type of player this year in 2024 as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. If you can move an Olave, maybe a Devontae Smith for Rashee, I'm down for it, man. I'm totally down for it. And maybe, if you can move, I don't want to say the quiet part, out loud, but if you can tear down from a guy like Garrett Wilson and get Rashee Rice plus thrown in, this might be a good time to do that. Just saying, because it may look like it's going to get better for Garrett Wilson here, in the short term. Rodgers wants to feed him. He's talking good about him in the press conference today. So far they haven't, and let's just be honest here, Rodgers ain't sticking around for a long time. So even if they do feed him this year, Garrett Wilson's going to be back to the quarterback woes next year when they're trying to figure out who's the next guy, or 2 years from now when they're trying to figure out who's the next guy. And guess who's still going to be passing the football to Rashee Rice? Patrick Mahomes. So that's what I'm doing. Let's talk about some fallers though, man, because fallers, there's quite a few, and actually a lot of quarterbacks are falling. It's been a tough start of the year for the quarterback position. Here's one we'll talk about to start the position. It's going to be Tua Tagovailoa. Quarterback 15 falls to quarterback 26. We know why. We know why he has fallen up to this point. This is a guy who has suffered the concussion again. Everybody was worried about it a couple years back. It seemed like last year he was pretty healthy, but now the concussion happens. Tua Tagovailoa, he falls all the way to quarterback 26. What's the take here, man? What are we doing here? Is this good, or is this right that he has fallen to 26, or is this just overreaction?
I don't blame people for pressing a panic button for him. I know one thing: he's worth more than goddamn Zach Moss. I'll tell you that much.
We saw some panic sells in our league. Unfortunately, we didn't get to capitalize on the panic, but there was some panicking.
Yeah. I think people are panicking. Once the news came out, hey, this guy's going to play again. We don't know if it's going to be this season or next, but he's going to play again. You're always going to be under the threat of him getting injured again. I'm pretty damn sure. I'm not going to say I'm pretty damn sure. It will behoove him to, next time he shows up on the NFL field, to be wearing a Guardian helmet. He needs to be doing whatever he can to keep what's happening to him from happening again. He needs to also do a better job at protecting himself to keep those things from happening. But him being traded at 26, who are the guys around him, Andrew, at 26?
Geno Smith, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Will Levis, Gardner Minshew. These are the guys in the range. He's in between all of them.
Yeah, that's too low. Those guys are all quarterback threes. They're all guys that,
they're all risky in themselves.
They're risky in themselves, and they're guys that you will plug in during a bye week. That is not Tua. Tua can be anywhere from a quarterback 2 to a quarterback 1 for your team when he's on the field. He's still going to be a high-powered offense. He still has a high-powered offense coach.
And I agree. I think Tua Tagovailoa, the panic, the fear, it's made him a buy. You can send a 25-second and get 2 on the team, do it. You can send one of those quarterbacks we listed and get 2 on the team because somebody's panicked, do it. You send a running back or a wide receiver that's a flex play for you some weeks, do it. That being said, I want to play the game at the quarterback position, and you tell me Tua or this guy, and we'll just show you how much higher he should actually be in these rankings. But I'll just go with the guys over him. Geno or Tua? You're going Tua, right?
Yeah. I'll make it easy. I'll take him over every guy you mentioned a second ago.
Okay, so let's move on all the way up. Bo Nick.
I'm taking him over Bo Nick.
Derek Carr.
I'm taking him over Carr because I don't feel like Carr can sustain what he's doing.
Michael Penix.
Taking him over Michael Penix.
Goff.
That's where it starts to get dicey.
JJ McCarthy.
I'm not just saying it because you here. I kind of like McCarthy. I like McCarthy's coach. So as
Yeah.
long as that coach is there, I'm taking McCarthy.
Darnold's throwing for 300. McCarthy can do it too. Drake May, Baker Mayfield, like you're taking those guys over Tua right now?
I'm not taking Baker. I'm not taking Tua over Baker. Drake May, I'll think about it. I don't know what the hell he's going to do.
Look, dude, we're just in the conversation that we've had. We've moved him up from 26 to now he's in that like 14 to 18 range.
Yeah.
That's a significant move up. Like that's not even like a small move up. That's a significant move up. So it is a massive overreaction. I just wanted to do that to show the overreaction. But Tua Tagovailoa, obviously, you know, it's scary. There's risk. There's long-term health concerns potentially for him. Obviously, we're not doctors. We don't really know what's going on. Only Tua is going to know what's going on with the doctors that he speaks with. But if he's hopping on the football field again, I have to assume that he feels confident or comfortable enough in his decision that we should just be comfortable enough with him in our fantasy football lineups. Point blank, period.
Yeah, and that the doctors probably told him that there's a way for him to continue his career, I imagine. I hope that it wouldn't be a case where they told him not to do it and he said he'll do it anyway. Or at least that the team would tell him that he can't do it. So
And here's the thing, man. If you're selling Tua for a late second, whatever, like, Brody, you will never find in the second round, you are not finding a quarterback like Tua again on your roster. You know who quarterbacks were going in the second rounds of drafts this year? You're getting Spencer Rattlers in the late second rounds of drafts this year, bro. Like,
yeah,
that's the type of quarterback that you're drafting. You got Bo Nix in the second round of drafts this year, Penix in the second round of drafts potentially this year. If you were in 12-man leagues, like those guys were still maybe even late first. So like that's the type of talent you're getting. You don't get to a type of talent for second round picks. So if you can go buy that, not even, you know, the type of talent, plus include the offense that he's in and the play calling that he's in. So speaking of talent, speaking of quarterbacks, speaking of falling, speaking of high draft capital, let's talk about Bryce Young, because Bryce Young is one of the biggest fallers. Obviously, you know, we had the news that Bryce Young was benched after just 18 or 19 starts as I think it was 19 starts for the Panthers. Seems like that leash was very, very short. Typically, you see guys get a lot more time to develop, especially when you know that you're drafting them into a shitty situation. But Bryce Young, QB 19 to QB 33 now. We're talking about Bryce Young not even being, you know, in the same conversation. He's in the conversation with Spencer Rattler, like Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett. That is the Sam Howell. This is where we're ranking Bryce Young now. I hate to say it. Are we buying?
dude, we're buying. Like somebody want to give me Bryce for a third, I'm buying it. It's funny that he is your second quarterback here because you see everything. I'm pretty sure you've seen the report that came out earlier today about the Dolphins potentially wanting to acquire Bryce Young. Man, that would make our conversation really interesting.
It would. I want to throw this out there too. The day that Bryce Young got benched, I put a tweet out on Twitter and I said, "Who says no? Bryce Young to the Miami Dolphins with Tua's concussion right now. Tell me that Bryce Young doesn't fit in that offense and play the quarterback position the same way that Tua does. They come from the Alabama system. They're both kind of play close to the line of scrimmage, yada, yada, yada." I said, who says no? You know, Miami gets a high upside type of swing for a discount, and they get, you know, potential. If Tua does not play long term, you get another guy that you get to roll in and still be competitive. I don't know. We'll see. I think, go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off, but yeah, I did mention that the day that he got benched, I was like, he would actually kind of be all right in Miami.
I've the Raiders, I'd trade for him. But just to get back to the point, yeah, he's a buy right now, just depending on what you're spending on him. Anything higher than the third, if I get a good discount on him, then I would, like a third round pick or something like that. I'm not trading a second for Bryce Young at this point. His stock was already kind of crumbling like before he got benched, like in the off season. So I mean, I can't remember if you sold him or if you bought him in one of the leagues, but like I don't remember the price being very high.
I was selling and buying Bryce Young in different leagues all off season because I drafted him in a lot of rookie drafts. I was selling him, I was buying him. I was basically just like trying to find value edges. But I did buy him this off season. It looks horrible now. It looks actually like horrible. The trade, I labeled it as the Canales theory because, as you know, Dave Canales worked with Geno, resurgence in his career, worked with Baker, resurgence in his career, moved on to work with Bryce. Obviously, they didn't even give it a chance to resurge his career, but I traded Baker Mayfield for Bryce and called it the Canales theories and just said, if Canales helped him, maybe he can help him. And it looks horrible now because Baker's still balling.
You did not factor in David Tepper, sir. You did not factor in the Tepper theory where I own this team and I'm going to screw it up as I see fit.
Yeah. But then in another league, I sold Bryce for a 25 first round pick. So like I was able to get a first and I just was flipping and moving, whatever. But now I'm to the point where it's like I was offered. Here's a good thing because I was offered in a league where I have Bryce Young. I only have him left in 2 leagues. And I only went into this season with 2 shares of Bryce. And I got offered yesterday it's my own second round pick in 2025. And I'm like one of the top contenders in that league. So it's a late second. I was offered it and I was like, it's a good offer. It's probably fair value, but like, I don't know if I feel like it's enough for me to give up. Like, I feel like I'd rather just see what happens with Bryce Young for a late second. No.
Okay, then I wouldn't do it. Like, if you can afford to let him simmer on the bench, then that's what I would do because it would make you sick to your stomach if he got traded to like a team like the Dolphins, the Raiders,
gets the starting job and actually looks decent.
Yeah. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah, and then I was offered a lot. As soon as the benching happened, I was getting 3rd round picks thrown at me like Halloween candy, and I just declined all of those left and right. I'm not selling him for a 3rd, but if somebody's willing to sell him to you for a 3rd and you can buy him for a 3rd, I'm doing that. I like you said, I'm not at the point where I'll send the 2nd if I have him. And you want to just be out completely and you need the draft capital, I'm okay selling him for a 2nd. But in my specific situation, I don't need the draft capital. My team's so deep that I don't really even have roster space. So it's like I'd rather just roll with Bryce and in the offseason make a decision then. If I sell him for a late 2nd next offseason, a team trades for him or something like that happens. Like you got to think too, there's other teams that could potentially need QB at the beginning of next year. Next year's draft class isn't a strong quarterback class. Teams might be able to look at Carolina and say, hey, we'll take a shot on Bryce rather than take a shot on Quinn Ewers or rather than take a shot on Carson Beck or whoever it may be. I know they all have fans of, people are going to like those guys, whatever, they're the college guys. But I could see like Brian Daboll saying like, we don't want Daniel Jones. Let us just try and fix Bryce.
Yeah. I could see that. I don't think it's over for Bryce just yet. I think the general consensus around the league is that the kid got a raw deal. The kid got drafted by the team that drafted him, traded away everything to get him. So he had nothing his first season. And then now we're going into his 2nd season and he's already benched. He still doesn't have anything. They somehow thought that Jonathan Brooks, who's not even playing, and Xavier Leggett were going to be the driving forces to get him over the hump. And like, I don't even think the problem
is a bad defense that traded away their elite pass rusher and Brian Burns. Like,
yeah. I bet you there's teams around the league right now salivating, like hoping they could take advantage of David Tepper. I guarantee it. And knowing him, it's going to happen. Like,
it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, man. Like when you realistically look at it, and like it's easy with hindsight being 2020, where you can look back and say like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have bought into Bryce as a rookie because of the situation that was in front of him. But here's the thing, like it's almost like Carolina traded all of this support to go get Bryce, and then once Bryce got there, they were like, okay, now elevate the squad for us without the help. And then when he didn't elevate the team, they said, well, we're going to cut ties with him as quickly as possible and just redo this whole thing. I can't imagine. I just don't, I don't understand it. I still probably won't understand it as much as people want to tell me, well, Bryce looked bad. Yes, obviously he looked bad. There's not a reason why, but still, with him looking bad, Andy Dalton is not, the answer for you. The Carolina Panthers are not a Super Bowl contender. The Carolina Panthers are not a team that is going to be competitive. The best situation for Carolina, in my opinion, and I get it, I said this on Twitter and there were some Carolina fans that were like, well, we don't want to watch our team lose. No shit. Nobody wants to watch their team lose. But at the end of the day, I don't want to watch Andy Dalton win 4 games and now we lose out on the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick in the future because Andy Dalton had to go win 4 games for us.
Like, there's so many moving parts and so many screw ups connected to this because it's like, dude, if you were going to do this, why didn't you just start Andy Dalton at the beginning of last season and have Bryce Young watch? I don't even know if Andy Dalton was on the
He
roster,
was.
but that's besides the point anyway. You could find a veteran quarterback like Andy Dalton anywhere. You could have had Bryce watch for a whole season and then tried to put him out there. You could have you traded away everything to get him. Now you have the moving part of, let's say they do screw over Bryce. Let's say they trade Bryce. You think Quinn Ewers or somebody? I was watching something earlier. They said like whoever gets, because Carolina clearly was probably going to get the number 1 overall pick. Like they were saying that the number 1 quarterback that gets drafted, oh my God, if it's Shedeur Sanders, then this has definitely happened. They're going to basically be like, yeah, I'm not playing. Like, and I know people said that
We
about
just saw what you did to Bryce Young. Why the hell would I want to play for you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So this rabbit hole is probably going to get even deeper than it is now. Them benching him was 100% the bad move. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the Panthers. It doesn't help Bryce, and it's not going to help the Panthers when they have to draft another quarterback.
I agree, man. So that being said, if you have Bryce Young, you're panicked because you don't know what happened. Obviously, this caught a lot of people by surprise because you don't bench a number 1 overall pick, 2 games into a second year. That's just not what you typically do, especially when you know that, your team as a whole is a development project. That being said, you can buy him for a third. I'm doing it. I don't care. I'm buying him for a third. If it turns out to be nothing, it was a 3rd round pick, doesn't mean shit to me. Buy him for the third. If you can get somebody to give you a 2nd round pick and you want to sell for the 2nd round pick, I don't hate it. You can go do that. Wash your hands, clean a Bryce Young and move on. But the reality is, the 2nd round pick too, it's probably like a 20% hit rate. So, do with that as you will. But that being said, let's move on to another quarterback. We're talking about another number 1 pick. And there's going to be a lot of conversation that I think you want to have here because we're going to be talking about your boy, Caleb Williams. He is one of the top 5 fallers in Dynasty rankings right now. He went from QB5 30 days ago to QB 11 now. Still viewing him as a QB 1, but obviously so far the start for Caleb Williams, Dynasty managers are reacting very maybe premature, very rapidly. There's a lot of reaction happening to Caleb Williams, a lot of shit talk, a lot of slander at the moment. For Caleb Williams, but let's just have a conversation here, and I'm gonna give you the floor and kind of let you have what you want to say as the Bears fan. But I want to throw these in here before, as somebody who had Caleb Williams as my number 1 quarterback in the class coming in. He is still my number 1 quarterback in the class today. He is still a quarterback that I believe in. Obviously, it goes without saying, what you have seen in the first 2 weeks from the Chicago Bears offense as a whole, what you have seen from Caleb Williams as a whole, has not been ideal. It has not been pretty. It has not looked good. Am I panicked on Caleb Williams? No. Was the QB5 ranking at the beginning of the year probably too high? Probably. But that being said, I don't think we need to panic sell Caleb Williams. I don't think, he's a guy that we should be falling on in our ranks or dumping down our ranks. Right now, just the guys around him still, Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, that feels fine. That feels like almost where he probably should be. But that being said, he is one of the biggest fallers, and War, the floor is yours.
Oh man, there's so many things. Like, let's see, which angle do I want to attack this at first? Do I want to attack this at the way fans think in general? Do I want to attack the actual situation? Let's see here. Okay, first thing I'm going to attack is this idea that because of the jersey you wear or the team you play for, that you're doomed to be cursed no matter what. People, because Caleb Williams plays for the Bears does not mean that he's destined to fail as a quarterback. That's just
Bears.
that's just unrealistic thinking. That's mysticism. We're talking about mysticism here. Like it's no curses going on. I want to get that out the way. Next, I want to get out the way. Why is this happening? Because I think that's the question that most fans want to know. Why is this happening? Okay, first of all, we have to look at the NFL as a whole. And Andrew, he'll correct me if he hears something that's wrong. The NFL as a whole, at this point, after week 2, going into week 3, because we've already already had one game, is at an all-time low for scoring touchdown. All-time low for scoring touchdown. Why is that happening? What does that have to do with Caleb Williams? So that's happening because the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, has changed how much and what these guys do in the offseason. We have 3 games, used to have 4 games of dress rehearsal, used to be able to do more, do practice, get more reps in the offseason. And a lot of these teams just aren't doing that. Guys are playing like probably a total of 4 quarters for the entire like combined preseason game. And essentially what that has done, that has turned the first 4 weeks or so of the season into basically like an extended preseason. That's why you get certain things like the Raiders beating the Ravens, or, you know, I hate to say it because there's a lot of Saints fans out there, but the Saints looking like the Chiefs. Like, that's why you're getting all these out there results, these weird things happening. And I really do believe everything's going to adjust to the mean. Now, what does that concern the Bears? The Bears, I can tell you first and foremost, I don't care what you've seen on Hard Knocks, that team did not get enough work in together during the offseason. You come in, you have a new wide receiver weapon in Keenan Allen. You have a new wide receiver weapon in Rome Odunze. You have a new running back weapon in DeAndre Swift. You have a new offensive coordinator. You have all these new things, and people, we have to remember, I know we live in a microwave society now. We need instant gratification. Some of these things take time. That's one. 2, everything is not always going to look the same. Progression is not linear. Just because CJ Stroud came out and destroyed the league from day one, you're not going to get, I can almost probably guarantee that with the net in the next 5-10 years, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get a guy coming into the league and taking a storm like that. That's rare. And for people to go, and I understand it's some of Caleb's fault for why this is happening to him. The hype, the I don't get nervous, and telling the punter, you're not going to get too many chances to punt this ball. Like, or all the stuff that we're seeing from him, all the stuff we're seeing from the media, Hard Knocks, all that hype, it was unwarranted, because what was lost amongst all that is he's a rookie. Now, here's what I could tell you about him being on your roster and why it is a mistake for you to panic sell him. The Bears' next 4 to 5 games are against teams that are either undefeated, basically within their next 5-6 games, and I might be off because I'm not looking at the schedule. Those teams have a combined 1 win after 2 weeks. We're talking about a glut of 0-2 teams. The Colts, the Rams, even though, you know, I think the Rams has kind of got a raw deal. The Jaguars, the Panthers, and then they go on a bye week and they come back and play like the Commanders, who only won 1 game. So all the stuff you're seeing with Caleb is going to work itself out. You're going to get through the weeks that are considered an extended preseason. They're not playing one of the best defensive in the leagues in the Texas, and they're not playing the one of the best tandems of defensive tackles like they did in week 1. And Tavondre, I don't know if it said name, Tavondre Sweat, who I think is going to be a stud, and freaking Jonathan Simmons. So Jeffrey Simmons. So let's just steal a quote from that piece of crap. Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax, just let this play out. Okay, that's all I pretty much have to say about it. You shouldn't be panic selling Caleb Williams. If you drafted him number 1 overall in your dynasty draft, you can still feel confident. Just remember, the one thing that's forgotten, this is typically how rookie quarterbacks that are thrust into the starting lineup from day one play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add to that, really. Really, the other thing that I would add is you mentioned that CJ Stroud was balling from day one. There was an interview that CJ did the other day where he was talking about the interaction with Caleb Williams, because that caught a lot of news hype because of the way that Caleb was acting or whatever. You know, that's the way that people painted it. You know, CJ said that he didn't really get ball until week 3 or 4. He said he didn't feel like he hit his groove until week 3 or 4 of the season last year.
He lied, though. He did lie, because he was like 303 touchdowns in week 2, but I digress.
But he said he didn't feel like he hit his stride. So, you know what? I just think there's not lost hope on Caleb Williams. It feels like some people feel like they've lost hope. Like they feel like they might have drafted, you know, the next Bryce Young, or they might have drafted the next Trevor Lawrence. And it's like, even then, like, I do want to kind of pause that, because when you say, you know, I drafted the next Trevor Lawrence in Dynasty, bro, we're talking about a guy that's, you know, teetered between a low-end QB1 and a high-end QB2 in Dynasty for the last 3-4 years in Trevor Lawrence. Like, and you're upset that he's been performing at a low-end running back 1 number, like, every single year for the most part. That's what we're upset about. in a super flex league, you throw him in your lineup as your QB2 or your QB1, probably your QB1 you're wishing you got more, but if you throw him in as a QB2, you're more than comfortable with what Trevor Lawrence does for you. Now, some matchups you're probably going to stream other guys, but at the end of the day, like, the quarterback position is so hard to hit on, and I think you're right. The expectations were insane. Like, when you're getting thrown next Patrick Mahomes, the next Patrick Mahomes, the next Patrick Mahomes, left and right, all off season long. Oh, when he does this, it looks like Patrick Mahomes. When he does that, it reminds me of this, and the way that he acts reminds me of Tom Brady and Kobe Bryant and these guys. Like, okay, you know what? The kid has expectations. I think for himself as well. He has higher expectations of himself. I just think I'm not writing excuses for the kid, but it's definitely not the time to write him off either. That's just, let's not do that after 2 weeks. Let's give it some time. The NFL is hard. It's very hard. It's not an easy league to play in.
If you have Caleb on your roster and you're looking for any signs of hope in the first 2 weeks, what I can tell you is that from week 1 to week 2, he did play better. If you sit and watch the tape closely, you will see that he really, even though he threw 2 interceptions, he didn't play horrible. He did play better. They already have him, making adjustments at the line of scrimmage, which typically they don't have rookies do. The interceptions he threw against the Texans, he was pressing. Like, their back was against the wall. The offense wasn't doing anything. So he did what Caleb Williams done, what he's done in college. He started trying to play hero ball. That's some rookie stuff. As the offense irons itself out, he won't have to do that. Andrew will tell you, me and Andrew talk about this daily. The offensive coordinator has not helped Caleb Williams at all. I think that he's also trying to get his footing on the roster. The fact of the matter is, the offensive coordinator hasn't been doing anything for Caleb. If you haven't realized it already, Caleb Williams was their leading rusher against the Texans. So that should kind of tell you almost everything you need to know. And they always say that, okay, this is the last quote I'll say on it. They always say the best friend for a rookie quarterback is what? The tight end and the running game. This offensive coordinator has not run the ball, and he has not played Cole Kmet. So
yeah,
take that.
I told you after week 1, I sent you my write-up that I do every week about, the games. And after week 2, I had the same takeaways that I had week 1. And those takeaways that I've had through 2 weeks now for Chicago, both times pretty much have been, this offensive line sucks. Caleb Williams is not getting the protection that he needs. He is basically under pressure every other play because somebody has blown up the offensive line. Might be because you guys have played good defensive lines. We'll see what happens this week against a much worse defensive line. But that being said, too, the other takeaway was that Shane Waldron's play calling has been atrocious. It has been horrible. The play calling that he has had. There have been no favors done for anybody, quite frankly, in this offense. DJ Moore isn't getting good calls his way. Caleb isn't getting good play calls. DeAndre Swift isn't getting used to the best of his ability. Like, it's almost like Shane Waldron, and I don't want to sit here and poop on Shane Waldron, that much, but it's like he doesn't even understand the fucking personnel that he has. Like, he doesn't even know what is happening.
He doesn't. And you know what? I hope he knows this. If it doesn't straighten out, I guarantee he will be the first one to go. He'll have one of the shortest offensive coordinators, because teams don't let. It's one thing we're talking about Justin Fields. He's in year 3. He has Luke Getsy. It's a whole nother ball game when a team spent the number 1 overall pick that they jettisoned a quarterback that they didn't hate from the team to draft. They're not going to let some snot-nosed offensive coordinator, stick around and screw up the quarterback just because he drank a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. So,
well, and I'll tell you this too, and you know this as well as anybody else, but there have already been conversations of who's going to keep calling the plays. There's already conversations happening about that in Chicago. People are starting to ask questions about, is Waldron going to continue calling the offense? And another thing that is not going to happen, at least if he's in any way, shape, or form smart enough to allow this, Matt Eberflus knows that if Shane Waldron continues calling the offense and they keep losing games, Eberflus's ass is on the hot seat too. Like, it is. And he is not going to let Waldron play call him out of his head coaching job. He'll go to another guy before he loses his job.
Yes, because as well as the Bears defense has been playing, if your offense is that bad for so long, the defense will eventually start to break down. And if the defense breaks down and Eberflus is in charge of the defense and the offense sucks, then guess what's going to happen? They're both going to go.
And when next year you have guys like Clint Kubiak, who has the Saints looking like the goddamn Chiefs, and you have Ben Johnson, and these guys back up for more offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, and these guys are all back up for head coaches. You might look at the way that Bears offense has looked and said, I'd like for us to throw some touchdowns this year. Let's go hire that guy.
I'm willing to bet that had Matt Eberflus gotten fired this past offseason, Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick would not be currently the still offensive coordinator for the team. One of them would have jumped ship for a chance to draft to draft and coach Caleb.
Hindsight probably is what you guys should have done.
Yeah, probably.
But let's move on to the next faller because we spent a lot of time on Caleb. I knew we would, but that's fine. Let's talk about this faller. It is Mark Andrews, tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. He went from tight end 6 to tight end 9. Look, this has basically been the surgence of Isaiah Likely. This has been the reason for Mark Andrews to fall. Everybody basically panicked after week 1 saying, Mark Andrews is no longer the tight end 1 of the Ravens, and now Mark Andrews has fallen. Do we care? Are we buying Mark Andrews now at a sunken cost? What are we doing here?
Well, that I've felt this was coming for the longest. I don't care if I sold Isaiah Likely for cheap this week. I still love the kid. I've seen this coming. He fell. He's going to continue to fall. I don't care if Isaiah Likely didn't have an explosive game the other day. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Mark Andrews did either. I think he had a very pedestrian game for his standards, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have like the greatest day either, but like it. Yeah. Whatever. It's the tight end position at the moment.
They are still balling. I just don't think. So. For the first time of our fallers, I feel like this fall is appropriate because I don't think it's going to get too much better than what it is now. I don't see Mark Andrews and I like, for that matter, Kelsey probably. I think it's getting to, and they're young in like real life terms, but I think in terms of football players, they're getting to the end of the road for both of them. Mm-hmm. I think, man, I was talking to you. I was talking to our league the other day about how drastic the fall of Zach Ertz was. Like, I think people forget at one point, I think that was the big 3, right? Zach Ertz.
Now Ertz is low key like putting up numbers in Washington, whatever, bro.
Yeah. Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews. That was the big 3. And then Ertz fell all the way down to the dumps. And like, it's very rare for you to be a Travis Kelce, a Tony Gonzalez, a Rob Gronkowski. Like, a lot of these tight ends, like, look at what happened to Jimmy Graham. Remember Jimmy Graham was like, this is big. So I mean, and it doesn't help Mark Andrews that now they have a younger, faster, more athletic guy in there who, and his injuries don't help either. So I think this fall is appropriate.
Okay. I think for me, I'm willing to buy Mark Andrews if I need tight end help at this cost. I mean, we're talking like in the range of right now, he's the same value as an early second on Keep Trade Cut. A 25 early second, more than happy to give that to get Mark Andrews on my team because the usage is still there. Obviously, they have another guy, but they're running more 12 personnel than anybody in the NFL at the moment, and that's because of the weapons that they have. But I want to ask this question, then we'll play the game that we always play. But right now, they're legitimately back-to-back on Keep Trade Cut. They are virtually the same exact value. You have to pick Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely in Dynasty Fantasy Football. You are taking. They're the exact same cost today.
Mark Andrews.
I do too. At the exact same cost. If somebody is nervous and you can flip your Likely for Andrews right now, I'm doing it. I'm not buying Likely if I have Andrews. I'm not, trying to handcuff a tight end. That seems idiotic at this point.
I definitely tried to make that move this week. Give somebody the tight end handcuff for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. But here's the game, and we'll play it. Kelsey or Andrews moving forward?
Kelsey.
I go Andrews. Kittle or Andrews moving forward?
Andrews. I love Kittle, though.
I think I go Kittle. We've been the opposite on both those. Hawkinson or Andrews? It's easy Hawkinson for me.
I love TJ Hawkinson. So,
and then you get into like Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid. Those guys are clearly, you're taking them over Andrews at this point.
Yeah, even though Kyle Pitts is a disappointment to me, yes.
And then McBride, Laporta, Bowers, of course, of course. So, anyways, I think right now, I would teeter, if we're talking like buy, sell, hold, I think Andrews is like a hold and a buy almost at the same. Like, his value seems good enough that I can buy him, but I'm not selling him if I have him. I'll just hold him.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me.
So, all right, let's go to the last guy. Back to the quarterback position, one more player. It is going to be Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns. He is one of the biggest fallers, going from quarterback 25 to quarterback 32. Look, that's going to put him even lower than that range of quarterback that we talked about earlier with Tua. Quarterback 32 puts him in the range of Gardner Minshew, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Bryce Young. This is how we're viewing Deshaun Watson at this point. Look, I think the fall is probably warranted, but in the conversation as Daniel Jones and Bryce Young, that seems like really far of a fall. That feels like too much.
It kind of does, man.
And I don't
Your
even
boy,
like Deshaun.
yeah, your boy Cosby.
Not my boy.
No, they on your boy Cosby because you named him that.
Yeah, that's the nickname I gave his ass.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's pretty low. I definitely don't want no shares of him on my team. No, I'm not interested. Like, I can't say that I would sell him for anything because I would have never bought him in the first place. I sold him years ago, and he was an injured Texan before he started. No, when the massaging stuff first came out, I sold him. So, I mean,
to be honest, that probably was. People were going to say that you were selling low at the point. That might have not been the low point. I think we're at the low point now.
You guys did say it was the low point back then because we didn't think it was going to be. We still thought at that time, he was going to be a stud. I don't know what's happened. I think the whole situation has broken him. I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think the whole situation has broken him, man. I don't think we're going to get, and like, I know some people who are like, Deshaun Watson, he got screwed over and, that's messed up and this and that and this and that. And
he got screwed over? This is his own fucking fault, dude.
Look, man, I'm just telling you what they say.
Whatever,
but they're saying he's still a stud. He's still a stud. Look at that team. But I think now even you can ask the most honest Deshaun Watson truther. Looking at him now, they're probably like, yeah, this guy's done.
Well, we had a league mate of ours who has historically been a Deshaun Watson fantasy football truther, not really an apologist for real life, but he's apologized for him on the football field. And he asked us about 2 weeks ago to please remove his name from any further Deshaun Watson conversations because he said it's over. I do not stand with his football ability anymore. He said that is done. It's over with for me. My question for you, because I want to make this actionable for people who have Deshaun Watson. If you have him on a team, you're not selling him at this price, right? I mean, we're talking like Bryce Young. And are you flipping Deshaun for Bryce Young today?
Yeah.
You are flipping? You're selling Deshaun for Bryce?
And it kind of depends on where I am as a team. If I'm rebuilding, absolutely. If I'm contending, I might need him to come in on a bye week or something like that. And I want to, because he's not being benched. I mean, he might be benched. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say they'd rather have Jameis. So,
are you?
But Jameis don't want to be a starter. So
yeah, he loves that backup quarterback role. Are you selling Deshaun for 1 year or 2 years, maybe, of Aaron Rodgers?
Hell yeah.
You selling him for a year of Gardner Minshew?
If I'm a contender, yes. I think Gardner is going to be better.
You rolling the dice and hoping that it gets better with Will Levis?
Yeah, why not?
This is where we're at, folks. This is where we're at with Deshaun Watson. I think for me, I'd rather hold Deshaun than make those moves. I think the only one that I think the Aaron Rodgers, like if I can move Deshaun for Aaron Rodgers today, I'm doing it. But I think everyone else, I'm probably just holding Deshaun Watson. But this is, I mean, we're treading quickly towards like if Deshaun gets benched, it's over. Like I think the asset might be done. I don't know if another team's going to take the gamble that Cleveland took because we are watching in real time how much this is blowing back up into Cleveland's face. And we said it at the time. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say that we're Baker Mayfield fans over here on this channel. But at the time, you and I we were saying this is stupid. Because we liked what Baker was doing for them. And we said that getting Deshaun at the cost of which it costs to go get Deshaun, draft pick wise, contract wise, all of the other stuff, we would have rather had Baker Mayfield. And I think up to this point, we've been proven pretty accurately right on that statement.
Baker has only gotten better. He's only gotten better.
And you know what? It might have been because Baker got out of Cleveland. That might have been why he got better. So who knows? But that being said, if you have Deshaun Watson, I guess you're holding. If you can sell him for Rodgers, I'll sell him. I'll get out of this asset. But I think more so if I'm a team that can afford to take a risk and I have a Gardner Minshew and I have a Will Levis and I have, one of these guys and I'm willing to take the risk, I don't mind throwing it over at the Deshaun Watson manager. Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson might be the same guy right now. I don't mind, giving them an offer and seeing if I can get Deshaun and just hoping it gets better. But that's the thing, is we've been hoping it gets better for 2 years and it hasn't. So, at some point I think we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say this is not getting better. And it doesn't matter what happens because it just doesn't look good. I know that, there's another something floating around right now with Deshaun off the football field that, I don't know too much about. So I'm not going to sit here and talk a bunch about it. But I know that there's something floating around, and apparently there's a caveat in a contract or something like that they can potentially get out.
They don't deserve to get out, though, to be honest.
They don't. They fucking don't. Those Browns, and unfortunately not Browns fans. Browns fans, I feel like they've been through a lot of suffering, but the Browns organization does not deserve to get out of this shit. You dug your grave and lay in that bitch.
Absolutely.
But anyways, that's where we're at. Those are the top 5 risers, top 5 fallers on Keep Trade Cut. It has been a long episode. I appreciate each and every one of you guys watching. As always, if you liked today's episode and you made it to this point in the video, congratulations. That was a long one. You probably had probably could have sat down and ate a whole meal while you watched this one. But that being said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, join the Discord. You guys know what to do at this point. War, where can they find you at, and where can they watch some of your content?
If you like pro wrestling, you can find me on Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling, where we talk about WWE, we talk about AEW. We post weekly and daily shorts, well, just about daily. We post a lot of shorts. And that's where you can find us. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers, so we could try to keep up with Andrew as much as possible. He's leaving us in the dust a little bit. So come check us out. Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling with an attitude.
Yes, sir. Go check them out. It'll be linked in the description as well. It's always linked in the description, but make sure you go check it. It's linked in the description. And with that being said, nothing else for you guys today. Tomorrow, if you're watching this on Saturday when it comes out, tomorrow, if you have start sit questions, come hang out with me in the morning. Start sits on Sundays. That's what we always do. But until then, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.